You have until sundown to pack your things and leave my son's house." The words hung in the air of the elegantly furnished living room as Vivian Reed stood over me, her perfectly manicured finger pointing toward the door. The family portrait above the fireplace seemed to mock me now. Nathan and I smiling on our wedding day, flanked by his parents in their coordinated outfits. I looked up from my position on the antique sofa, the same one I'd spent weeks hunting down at estate sales, because it matched Vivian's vision for the Reed family home. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice steadier than I expected. "You heard me, Olivia. Nathan has finally come to his senses. The divorce papers are being drawn up. This house belongs to the Reed family, and you are no longer part of this family." Her voice was cold, clinical, the same tone she used when firing household staff. I stood slowly, smoothing the wrinkles from my skirt. The deed to the Victorian house, purchased entirely with my commission from selling the Palmer estate last year, was safely stored in my office downtown. The property that Vivian had coveted for decades, that she'd pressured Nathan to buy when it came on the market, that she'd redecorated as if it were her own, was legally mine alone. "I understand," I said, picking up my purse from the coffee table. "I'll need some time to arrange things." Vivian's triumphant smile faltered slightly at my calm demeanor. She'd expected tears, begging, the emotional breakdown she could later describe to her country club friends as proof of my instability. Instead, I walked toward the grand staircase, pausing at the first step. "Oh, and Vivian, I'd suggest you don't change the locks. That would be breaking and entering on my property." The color drained from her face as I climbed the stairs to pack an overnight bag, her spluttered objections fading with each step. By tomorrow morning, Vivian Reed would understand exactly what happens when you throw a real estate agent out of her own home. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Olivia Chen, and until 6 months ago, I was Olivia Reed. I'd built my career as one of Portland's top-performing real estate agents, specializing in historic properties. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd spent years helping others find their dream homes while my own home life was crumbling beneath a perfect facade. I'd met Nathan Reed 4 years earlier at an architecture preservation fundraiser. He was the handsome architect whose passion for restoring historic buildings matched my own love for finding them the perfect owners. Our connection was immediate. Both of us raised by immigrant parents, both of us driven to succeed in fields where connections and family names often mattered more than talent. Or at least, that's what I thought we had in common. "Olivia has such an eye for potential," Nathan had told his mother when introducing us at that first dinner at the Reed family home in the West Hills. "She can walk into a disaster of a Victorian and immediately see what it could become." Looking back, I should have noticed how Vivian's smile never reached her eyes, how she redirected the conversation to her preferred topics. The Reed family's 3-generation history in Portland, the importance of established roots, her subtle inquiries about my people and where they were originally from. But Nathan had squeezed my hand under the table, and I'd chosen to see only the promising future ahead of us. Our wedding was held in the sculpture garden at the Portland Art Museum, a compromise between Nathan's mother's preference for their country club and my desire for something that represented our shared interests. Vivian had insisted on handling most of the arrangements, from the caterer, her friend's company, to the florist, her garden club associate, to the guest list, heavily weighted toward Reed family connections. I'd yielded on most points, telling myself it was important to start our marriage with family harmony. "Marriage is about compromise," my mother had advised during one of our weekly phone calls, her voice carrying the wisdom of 35 years with my father. "But make sure you're not the only one compromising." I should have heeded her warning. The pattern was established early. Vivian would make a suggestion that sounded more like a command. Nathan would give me that pleading look that asked me to keep the peace, and I would acquiesce, storing away tiny resentments like pebbles in my shoe. The first year of marriage had been relatively peaceful. Nathan and I purchased a modest craftsman bungalow. My first home buying experience as something other than the agent. We filled it with a mixture of flea market finds I'd restored and more expensive pieces Vivian insisted on gifting us. A Reed family home must have certain standards, dear. The real trouble began when the historic Kensington Victorian on Willamette Heights came on the market. It was a property I'd coveted professionally for years. A 3-story 1890s masterpiece with original woodwork, stained glass, and a tragic backstory involving Portland's early lumber barons. The listing was mine through my brokerage, but I never expected to end up owning it. "The Kensington house is available," I'd mentioned casually over Sunday dinner at the elder Reed's home, responding to Vivian's inquiry about work. Vivian had set down her fork with uncharacteristic excitement. "The Kensington? Walter, isn't that the home you've always admired on our neighborhood tours?" Walter Reed had nodded, dabbing his mouth with his napkin. "Beautiful property. Needs substantial work, but the craftsmanship is irreplaceable. Shame about the price point, out of reach for most buyers in this market." "I'm handling the listing," I'd said. "First showings start Tuesday. It needs updating, but the bones are impeccable." What followed was an orchestrated campaign. Over the next weeks, Vivian began dropping hints about family legacy properties and investments worth making. She arranged for us to run into her friend Helena, whose children had so benefited from growing up in a historically significant home. Walter casually mentioned tax advantages of owning landmark properties during a lunch with Nathan, and Nathan, my husband, who had once shared dreams of renovating a mid-century modern home together, began to echo his mother's sudden passion for Victorian architecture. "Think about it, Liv," he'd said, sketching renovation plans one evening. "It's in my parents' neighborhood. The commute would be better for both of us. And with your commission as the selling agent plus what we'd get for the bungalow, we could make the numbers work." What I didn't tell Nathan was that I'd already made the numbers work, for myself. A major sale I'd closed for the Palmer estate had resulted in the largest commission of my career. Combined with my savings and careful investment planning, I could purchase the Kensington property outright without touching our joint finances or requiring Nathan's contribution. The decision to make the purchase in my name alone wasn't made lightly. But after 3 years of watching Vivian's influence creep into every aspect of our marriage, I wanted something that was undeniably mine. I consulted my own attorney, Harrison Davis, who advised me on keeping the transaction separate from marital assets. "Are you planning to divorce?" Harrison had asked bluntly across his mahogany desk. "No," I'd answered honestly. "I'm planning to stay married for a very long time, but I need something that's mine, that can't be redefined." Harrison had nodded, understanding immediately. "We'll structure it carefully. The purchase, the deed, the insurance, all in your name only. Since you're using premarital savings and commissions earned separately, we can maintain it as separate property." The sale went through quickly. I'd made a compelling offer to the sellers with a fast close and minimal contingencies. I signed the papers alone in Harrison's office, feeling a strange mixture of professional pride and personal secrecy. That evening, I told Nathan I had news about the Kensington house. "It sold today," I said, watching his expression carefully. "All cash. Offer well above asking." His disappointment was visible but brief. "Well, that's that, I guess. Mom will be crushed. She was already planning where to put her family heirlooms." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that it would have been our home, not his mother's showcase. Instead, I suggested we could still find another property in the same neighborhood eventually. The subject was dropped, and I told myself the temporary deception was necessary. I would surprise Nathan once I'd put my own stamp on the Kensington house, showing him my vision before Vivian could impose hers. That was the plan, at least. Reality took a different turn. Over the next several months, I worked with contractors during my lunch breaks and early mornings, carefully restoring the Kensington Victorian room by room. I hired artisans who specialized in historic preservation, choosing every paint color, light fixture, and restored detail myself. The house gradually transformed under my direction, becoming the perfect blend of historic character and modern convenience. I furnished it sparingly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Wanting Nathan's input once I revealed the truth. Meanwhile, I maintained our life in the bungalow, making excuses about client meetings to explain my absences. The distance between Nathan and me grew, though neither of us acknowledged it directly. He spent more evenings at his parents' home, claiming his father needed help with estate planning. I threw myself into my work and the Kensington restoration. It was Maya, my best friend since college, who finally called me out on the situation during one of our weekly coffee meetups at her shop. "So let me get this straight," she said, sliding a fresh latte across the reclaimed wood table in the quiet corner of Brew and Bean. "You secretly bought your dream house. You're secretly renovating it. Your husband has no idea. And you think this is going to end well?" Put that way, it sounded absurd. I traced the rim of my cup, avoiding her gaze. It wasn't supposed to be a long-term secret, just until I could show him the finished product without his mother's interference. "Olivia," Maya said gently, "you're not hiding a surprise party. You bought a house, a whole house. That's not healthy secret-keeping in a marriage." "I know," I admitted, "but it started as a small decision, and then it just grew. And now I don't know how to unravel it without looking like I deliberately deceived him." "Which you did," Maya pointed out. "Yes, but not maliciously. I just wanted something that was mine, that Vivian couldn't take over." Maya's expression softened. "I get it. That woman would test the patience of a saint. But you need to tell Nathan, and soon. Before this gets any more complicated." I promised her I would, and I meant it. I scheduled a special dinner for the following Friday, planning to come clean about everything. The house, my feelings about his mother's interference, my desire for us to make a fresh start in a home that could be truly ours. But Nathan didn't come home that Friday. Instead, I received a text message saying he was staying at his parents' to help his father with a legal emergency. When he returned Saturday afternoon, he was distant, distracted, barely meeting my eyes as he packed an overnight bag. "Is everything okay?" I asked, watching him from the doorway of our bedroom. "Fine. Dad's just going through some stuff with the family trust. Legal things. I need to be there." His movements were mechanical as he stuffed clothes into his duffel bag. "Nathan, we need to talk. There's something important I need to tell you." I stepped forward, reaching for his arm. He flinched away from my touch. "Not now, Olivia. I can't deal with anything else right now. This is important. It's about us, about our future." He zipped his bag closed with finality. "Whatever it is, it can wait. Some things are more important than your latest decorating crisis or client problem." The words stung with their dismissiveness. This wasn't my husband, this cold, impatient stranger. Something had changed, something beyond his father's legal issues. "How long will you be gone?" I asked as he brushed past me. "I don't know. A few days, maybe longer. I'll let you know." He paused at the door, still not making eye contact. "Don't wait up." After he left, I sat alone in our living room, the dinner I'd prepared cooling untouched on the table. My carefully rehearsed confession about the Kensington house now seemed trivial compared to whatever was happening with Nathan. I called him twice. Both went to voicemail. I texted asking if we could talk tomorrow. No response. The silence continued for 3 days. I threw myself into work, showing properties to clients during the day and working on the Kensington house until late at night. On the 4th day, I decided to confront the situation directly. I drove to the elder Reed's home, determined to speak. with Nathan face to face. Walter answered the door, his expression shifting from welcome to wariness when he saw me. "Olivia, this is unexpected." "I need to see Nathan," I said simply. "He's not answering my calls." Walter hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. "Now's not a good time. There are some family matters we're discussing." "I'm his wife. I am family." I stepped forward, not waiting for an invitation to enter. The tension in the house was palpable, as Walter reluctantly led me to the study. Vivian and Nathan sat at the large desk, papers spread between them. Rachel was perched on the window seat, typing furiously on her laptop. All conversation stopped when I entered. Nathan looked up, his face pale. "Olivia, you shouldn't have come here." "Shouldn't have?" I shook my head in disbelief. "You disappeared 4 days ago, barely communicating. What did you expect me to do?" Vivian's voice cut through the air. "Nathan is dealing with important family business. Your presence is not helpful." "What family business?" I demanded, looking from face to face. "What's going on here?" There was a moment of uncomfortable silence before Rachel spoke. "The family trust is underwater. Dad made some bad investments, and there are creditors circling. We're trying to protect what assets we can." I looked at Walter, whose proud posture had diminished, making him suddenly appear his age. "Is this true?" He nodded once, not meeting my eyes. "A series of unfortunate decisions. The timing of the market." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked Nathan. "I could have helped. Real estate is my expertise. We could have looked at options together." "This doesn't concern you," Vivian interjected sharply. "These are Reed family matters." "I am a Reed," I reminded her, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. "By marriage only," Vivian said dismissively. "This concerns Reed blood and Reed assets." Nathan said nothing to contradict his mother, his silence more damning than any words could have been. I turned to him directly. "Nathan, can we speak privately, please?" After a moment's hesitation that spoke volumes, he nodded and followed me into the hallway. Even there, he maintained a physical distance that felt deliberate. "What's really going on?" I asked quietly. "This isn't just about your father's investments, is it?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing, but now seemed like a stalling tactic. "It's complicated, Olivia. Uncomplicate it for me." He sighed heavily. "The family's in financial trouble. Serious trouble. Dad made some risky investments that didn't pay off. There are tax issues, potential fraud allegations. Everything's at risk. The house, the vacation property, even the business. And you didn't think I deserved to know this, as your wife?" "Mom thought," he began, then caught himself. "We thought it best to handle it internally first, before involving outside parties." The phrase cut deep. "Outside parties, that's what I am to you? To your family?" "That's not what I meant." But his eyes shifted away from mine as he said, "It. What about our home? The bungalow? Is that at risk too?" I needed to know how far this extended. "No, that's safe. It's in both our names, and it's not connected to the family assets." He hesitated. "Actually, that's part of what we're discussing. We might need to leverage the equity in the bungalow to help with legal fees." I stared at him in disbelief. "You want to mortgage our home to pay for your family's mistakes? They're my family, Olivia. What did you expect me to do?" "I expected you to talk to me, to treat me like a partner, not an afterthought." I took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you too. Something important." But Nathan was already looking back toward the study door. "Can it wait?" "We're in the middle of strategy planning with the lawyers." In that moment, I saw with painful clarity what I had been refusing to acknowledge for years. In the hierarchy of Nathan's life, I would always rank below the needs and demands of the Reed family.
particularly his mother's. "Sure," I said, my decision crystallizing. "It can wait." I left without another word to the family assembled in the study. Driving away from the Reed family home, I didn't go back to our bungalow. Instead, I went directly to the Kensington Victorian, my house, my sanctuary. As I unlocked the ornate front door, I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth would come out soon enough, but tonight I needed to be somewhere that was wholly mine. The next week passed in a blur of work commitments and careful planning. Nathan returned to the bungalow briefly to collect more clothes, offering vague explanations about making progress on the family situation. I nodded and asked minimal questions, already implementing my own strategy with Harrison's help. I hadn't intended things to unfold this way, but Vivian Reed had inadvertently given me the push I needed to claim my independence. I moved my essential belongings to the Kensington house piece by piece, telling Nathan I was donating items for a charity drive at work. I consulted with Harrison about protecting my assets in what was looking increasingly like an inevitable divorce, and I waited for the other shoe to drop. It happened on a Sunday, traditionally the day reserved for mandatory dinner at the Reed family home. I'd begged off the previous week, citing a migraine, but knew I couldn't avoid the confrontation forever. I dressed carefully in a navy blue dress that Vivian had once complimented, pulling my hair back in a sleek ponytail that projected the professional composure I would need. When I arrived, the atmosphere was different. Walter and Rachel were absent. Nathan sat stiffly on the sofa, while Vivian presided from her favorite armchair like a queen granting an audience. "Olivia," she greeted me with a tight smile. "Thank you for coming. We have matters to discuss." I took a seat across from them, hands folded calmly in my lap. "Where are Walter and Rachel?" "Meeting with the accountants," Nathan replied, his voice flat. "Dad asked us to have this conversation without him." "What conversation would that be?" I asked, though I already suspected. Vivian leaned forward slightly. "Nathan has been reluctant to address this, but time is of the essence. The family requires certain sacrifices to weather our current situation." "And you think I should be the one making those sacrifices?" I stated, not a question. "The Reed family has maintained its position in Portland society for 3 generations," Vivian continued as if I hadn't spoken. "That legacy must be protected, even in difficult times, particularly in difficult times." "Mother," Nathan said quietly, a hint of discomfort in his voice. She patted his knee. "It's all right, Nathan. Olivia is a businesswoman. She understands practical arrangements." Turning back to me, her expression hardened slightly. "Your marriage to Nathan was a mistake. I think deep down you both know that. Your backgrounds, your priorities, they've never aligned. Now, with the family facing challenges, it's time to make difficult decisions." "You want me to divorce Nathan," I said flatly. "I want you to do what's sensible," Vivian corrected. "A clean break, quiet and dignified. The bungalow would need to be sold, of course, to help with the legal expenses. We would ensure you receive a fair settlement." I couldn't help it. I laughed. The sound startled both of them. "A fair settlement? Determined by you, I presume?" Vivian's mouth tightened. "Our family attorneys would handle the details. The point is, this arrangement isn't working. Nathan belongs with his family during this crisis, not split between 2 worlds. And you deserve..." She paused, searching for a diplomatic phrase. "Someone better suited to your particular background." Throughout this extraordinary speech, Nathan said nothing. He sat beside his mother, eyes downcast, offering neither contradiction nor support. His silence was its own kind of betrayal, worse somehow than his mother's calculated dismissal of our marriage. "What do you say, Nathan?" I asked quietly. "Is this what you want too?" He looked up finally,
his expression pained but resolved. "It's not about what I want, Liv. It's about what needs to happen. The family's in trouble. Real trouble. I have responsibilities. And I'm not one of them," I finished for him. He didn't correct me. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress. "Well, thank you both for your honesty. I appreciate knowing where I stand." Vivian looked momentarily thrown by my calm response. She had expected tears, recriminations, the messy, emotional scene that would validate her long-held belief in my unsuitability. "You'll receive the divorce papers this week," she said, recovering quickly. "Our attorney suggested you vacate the bungalow as soon as possible so it can be prepared for sale." "And where do you suggest I go?" I asked mildly. "That's hardly our concern," Vivian replied. "I'm sure you have friends, or perhaps your parents." The casual cruelty of her dismissal, after 4 years of my efforts to fit into the Reed family, lit a slow-burning fuse within me. But I maintained my composure, nodding thoughtfully. "I see. Well, if that's all, I should go pack my things." Nathan finally stood. "Liv, I'm sorry it's come to this. I didn't want—" "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't pretend this isn't exactly what you're choosing." I left without another word, driving straight to the Kensington Victorian. As I climbed the grand staircase to the master bedroom, my bedroom, I felt a strange sense of lightness. The charade was over. The pretense of being accepted into the Reed family, of my marriage being a partnership rather than a carefully managed arrangement, had finally been shattered. 2 days later, I received a text from Nathan saying he'd be at the bungalow to discuss arrangements and asking when I'd be moving out. I replied suggesting we meet at the bungalow that evening. It was time to reveal my hand. I arrived early, taking one last walk through the home we'd shared. Despite Vivian's frequent criticisms and suggestions, Nathan and I had created something beautiful here. I ran my hand along the kitchen counter where we'd made Sunday pancakes, past the living room where we'd spent evenings planning our future, into the small office where I'd first dreamed of buying the Kensington property. Nathan arrived precisely at 6, using his key but knocking anyway, already treating the space as not quite his home. He looked tired, the strain of the past weeks evident in the shadows under his eyes and the new lines around his mouth. "Thanks for meeting me," he said formally, as if we were business associates rather than husband and wife. I wanted to talk about the practical aspects of moving forward. "Of course," I replied, matching his tone. "Would you like some coffee or something stronger?" He shook his head. "No, thank you. I can't stay long. Mother is expecting me for dinner to discuss strategy with the lawyers." Of course she was. I gestured to the living room sofa. "Shall we sit?" Once seated, Nathan pulled out a folded document from his jacket pocket. "These are the initial divorce terms our attorney has drawn up. It's straightforward. We sell the bungalow, split the proceeds after paying off the mortgage. You keep your business assets, I keep mine. No alimony given the short duration of the marriage." I took the paper, but didn't open it. "Your mother works quickly." "This isn't about my mother," he said, a flash of the old Nathan briefly visible. "This is about facing reality. Our marriage isn't working, Liv. It hasn't been for a while. And with everything happening with my family—" "I'm not contesting the divorce," I interrupted. "I agree it's necessary." He blinked, clearly surprised by my easy acquiescence. "You do?" "Yes, but I won't be signing these particular papers." I set them aside on the coffee table. "Olivia, please don't make this difficult. The terms are fair." "I have my own terms," I said calmly, "and my own attorney." Nathan's expression hardened slightly. "Is this about money?" "Because I've already told you there isn't any. The family assets are tied up in litigation. It's not about money. It's about honesty." I took a deep breath, There's something I need to show you. Would you drive with me? It's not far. Confusion crossed his face. Drive where? What are you talking about? 15 minutes of your time. That's all I'm asking. Then we can discuss divorce terms with clear understanding on both sides. Perhaps it was curiosity, or a remnant of the trust we once shared, but Nathan agreed. We drove in silence, me behind. The wheel, him looking increasingly perplexed as we turned into the historic Willamette Heights neighborhood. When I pulled up in front of the Kensington Victorian, beautifully restored with warm lights glowing from within, Nathan's confusion turned to recognition, then shock. "The Kensington house? Why are we here?" he asked as I parked in the driveway. "Because this is my home," I said simply. "And I want you to understand what that means before your mother throws me out of it tomorrow." I led him up the walkway, past the meticulously restored front garden, and unlocked the ornate front door. As we stepped into the foyer with its gleaming original woodwork and carefully preserved tile floor, Nathan's expression was one of complete bewilderment. "I don't understand. How do you have keys to this house? The listing sold months ago." "Yes," I agreed, guiding him into the living room where a fire crackled in the restored fireplace. "To me." There was a moment of perfect silence as the implications sank in. "You bought this house?" Nathan finally managed. "How? When?" 8 months ago, with my commission from the Palmer estate sale and my personal savings. I purchased it outright, no mortgage, no loans, and I've been restoring it, room by room, ever since. Nathan walked slowly around the space, taking in the period-appropriate furnishings, the carefully restored moldings, the blend of historic character and modern convenience that had been my vision from the start. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice unreadable. "I was going to. I tried to, actually, the night you stopped coming home." I watched him process this information. Originally, I bought it as a surprise. I wanted to create something that was truly ours, without your mother's influence. But as time passed and the distance between us grew, it became more than that. It became my safety net. Nathan sank into one of the armchairs, running his hand across the fabric absently. All those late client meetings, the charity donations. "Yes," I acknowledged. "I wasn't fully honest with you. That was wrong, and I'm sorry for that part." He looked up at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time in months. "The deed is in your name? Just yours?" "Yes. Legally, this house is my separate property. It has nothing to do with the Reed family assets or liabilities." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Mother will be furious. The Kensington house, she's coveted it for decades." "I know." I remained standing, watching the firelight play across his features. "Your mother came to the bungalow this morning while you were meeting with the lawyers. She told me I had until sundown to pack my things and leave her son's house. She said I'm no longer part of the family." Shame flickered across Nathan's gaze. "She shouldn't have done that. I was going to tell you myself." "It doesn't matter who delivered the message. The result is the same." I moved to the window, looking out at the neighborhood that was now mine. "I'll sign the divorce papers, Nathan, but I'll be using my own attorney, and I'll be protecting my assets, including this house." Nathan stood, approaching me hesitantly. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because tomorrow, when your mother shows up at the bungalow to make sure I've vacated Reed property, I won't be there. I'll be here in my home, and I wanted you to understand exactly what that means." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You're going to tell her?" "Not directly, but when she can't find me and demands to know where I've gone, you can tell her the truth. That I own the Kensington Victorian. That it's mine alone, untouchable by Reed family creditors or Reed family influence." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The house that Vivian had pressured Nathan to buy, that she had planned to fill with family heirlooms, that she had envisioned as a symbol of Reed family prestige, was now my sole property and sanctuary. "What happens now?" Nathan asked quietly. "Now we get divorced," I answered simply. "You help your family weather their financial crisis. I live my life on my terms, and we both learn from this." As Nathan left my home that evening, I felt no triumph, no vindictive satisfaction, only a profound sense of closure. I had built my own refuge, brick by brick, decision by decision. Tomorrow, Vivian Reed would learn that the woman she had dismissed as an outsider, unworthy of the Reed family name, had claimed the very prize she had coveted for decades. And I would be standing on my own front porch, deed in hand, ready to close the door on the life that had never truly been mine. The morning after my confrontation with Nathan, I woke in the master bedroom of my Victorian, sunlight streaming through the restored stained glass transoms. For a moment, I simply breathed in the silence, the absence of compromise that had defined my marriage. The antique grandfather clock in the hallway, a piece I'd rescued from an estate sale in the Pearl District, chimed 8 times. Vivian would be arriving at the bungalow soon, expecting to find me packing, perhaps even prepared to supervise my departure to ensure I didn't take anything she deemed Reed property. Instead, I was lounging in a clawfoot tub in my own bathroom, surrounded by marble I'd personally selected, in a house that had become my sanctuary. The thought brought a smile to my face as I prepared for the day ahead. I dressed carefully, in a charcoal pencil skirt and emerald silk blouse, an outfit I'd purchased despite Vivian's comment that jewel tones don't flatter women over 30. My phone remained deliberately silent. I'd turned off notifications from Nathan's number after he'd left last night. Maya arrived at 9 with coffee and pastries from her shop, responding to my SOS text with the loyalty that had defined our friendship since college. "Holy architectural dream," she breathed as she stepped into the foyer, taking in the soaring ceilings and restored woodwork. "When you said you'd been renovating, I pictured, I don't know, some new paint and kitchen cabinets, not this." I led her through to the sunroom at the back of the house, where morning light poured through a wall of windows overlooking the gardens. It's been my secret project, my sanity project, really. And Nathan had no idea? Maya set the bakery, box on the wrought iron table I'd placed to catch the best morning light. Until last night, no. I poured us both coffee from the carafe I'd prepared. Though at this point, I'm less concerned with Nathan's reaction than with his mother's. Maya grimaced. "The Dragon Lady descends today?" According to her schedule, she should be arriving at the bungalow right about. I checked my watch. Now. My phone chimed. Not Nathan, but my home security app. I opened it to see Vivian Reed standing on the porch of the bungalow, finger repeatedly jabbing the doorbell. I'd installed the system remotely during the renovation of the Victorian, another practical decision that was now proving its worth in entertainment value. Maya peered over my shoulder at the screen. "Wow, she really does look like she's ready to evict you herself. Is that a designer clipboard she's carrying? Probably a list of everything she considers Reed property, down to the teaspoons she gave us last Christmas." I kept watching as Vivian tried peering through the windows, her frustration visible even on the small screen. "Shouldn't you answer? Her calls? Put her out of her misery?" Maya asked, selecting a blueberry scone from the box. "I've spent 4 years answering Vivian Reed's calls, accommodating her schedules, and adapting to her expectations," I replied, setting the phone down. Today, she can experience what it feels like to be ignored. By mid-morning, I had 17 missed calls. 10 from Vivian, 7 from Nathan. The voicemails progressed from imperious demands to thinly veiled threats to, finally, genuine confusion. I listened to the last one as Maya and I finished our coffee. "Olivia, this is beyond childish," Vivian's voice resonated with controlled anger. "Nathan has explained about your accommodations, which we will discuss at an appropriate time. Your absence from the bungalow is delaying necessary preparations for its sale. Call me immediately to arrange the transfer of your personal items. Maya raised an eyebrow. Transfer of your personal items? She makes it sound like you're being released from prison. In some ways, I am. I deleted the message. 4 years of trying to be good enough for the Reed family. 4 years of subtle put-downs and helpful suggestions about everything from my career to my wardrobe to my inability to provide a grandchild on Vivian's preferred timeline. So what's the plan? Maya asked, practical as always. You can't hide out in your gorgeous secret mansion forever. I'm not hiding, I corrected. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference. My phone lit up again, this time with a text from Nathan. Mother is livid. She's threatening to have the locks changed at the bungalow. Where are you? I showed Maya the message. And there it is. He's still running interference for her. Are you going to answer? I considered for a moment, then typed a response. I'm at my home, the one with my name on the deed. Your mother is welcome to change the locks at the bungalow. I've already removed anything I care about. His reply came almost immediately. This isn't helping the situation. 4 years of marriage condensed into 4 words, I murmured. This isn't helping the situation. Always my responsibility to smooth things over, to accommodate, to help. Maya squeezed my hand. You know I'm in your corner, right? Whatever you need. I know, and right now, I need to finish getting settled here and go to work. I have clients to meet, houses to sell, and a life to rebuild. I stood, gathering, our empty cups. The Reed family drama will have to continue without my participation. Maya helped me unpack the last few boxes I'd brought from the bungalow before heading back to her coffee shop. After she left, I walked through each room of the Victorian, mentally cataloging what still needed to be done. The house was largely furnished, but there were personal touches missing. Artwork I'd left behind, books still boxed in the bungalow garage, kitchen equipment I hadn't yet transferred. By noon, I was in my office downtown, reviewing listings and preparing for an afternoon showing. The familiar routine of work provided a welcome distraction from the morning's tension. I'd built my career on understanding what people truly wanted in a home, beyond square footage and school districts. It was a skill that had somehow failed me in my own marriage. I had never truly seen what Nathan wanted. Or perhaps I'd seen, but chosen to ignore the signs. My assistant, Zoe, poked her head into my office around 2 o'clock. Olivia? There's a Mrs. Reed here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. The moment I'd been anticipating had arrived. I closed the property listing on my screen and straightened my desk. Send her in, please. And Zoe, hold my calls for the next 15 minutes. Vivian swept into my office like a storm front, immaculately dressed in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Her gaze swept critically around my space as if cataloging its deficiencies before settling on me. Olivia. My name sounded like an accusation on her lips. I see you've decided to be difficult. Good afternoon, Vivian, I replied evenly. I'm in the middle of a workday. What can I help you with? She remained standing, gripping her designer handbag like a weapon. You know exactly why I'm here. Your childish disappearing act this morning was completely unacceptable. The bungalow needs to be prepared for market immediately. The bungalow is jointly owned property, I reminded her. Any decisions about its sale will need to be made between Nathan and me through our respective attorneys. Nathan has already agreed. Nathan doesn't have unilateral authority to sell our marital home, I interrupted. But that's not really why you're here, is it? A flash of something, perhaps surprise that I was challenging her directly, crossed her face before she composed herself. I don't know what you mean. You're here because Nathan told you about the Kensington house, I said calmly. About the fact that I own it, solely in my name, and that it's not subject to Reed family control. Vivian's perfectly manicured nails dug into the leather of her handbag. That house has been a landmark in our neighborhood for generations. The idea that you secretly purchased it with my own money, restored it with my own resources, and now legally own it, I finished for her. Yes, I can see how that would be upsetting to you. Do you honestly think this spiteful maneuver will change anything? Vivian's voice lowered to the controlled tone I recognized from numerous family conflicts, the calm before the storm. Nathan has made his decision. The marriage is over. Your real estate gambit doesn't alter that reality. I'm well aware of Nathan's decision, I replied, and I've made mine. The Kensington house is my home now. What happens with the bungalow can be determined through proper legal channels. We had plans for that property, Vivian said, almost to herself. It was meant to be a Reed family home. And now it's my home, I stated simply. I'm sorry if that disrupts your plans. Vivian's eyes narrowed. You think you've won something here, don't you? Some small victory in this sordid conclusion to your marriage. But let me assure you, Olivia, the Reed family has weathered far greater challenges than an unsuitable daughter-in-law with delusions of grandeur. The insult didn't sting as it might have in the past. Instead, I felt a curious detachment, as if observing our interaction from a distance. Is there anything else, Vivian? As I mentioned, I have work to do. She straightened, adjusting her jacket with a practiced gesture. I'll expect your cooperation with the bungalow sale. Despite your theatrics, I'm sure you understand the practical necessity of clearing this matter quickly. I understand practical necessities very well, I agreed. Which is why I've already instructed my attorney to handle all communications regarding the divorce and property division. Harrison Davis. I believe you've met him at the Historical Preservation Society fundraiser last year? Recognition flickered. In her eyes, Harrison's reputation as a formidable divorce attorney was well established in Portland's social circles. You're making a mistake, Olivia. This hostile approach will only make things more difficult. Protecting my interests isn't hostility, Vivian. It's common sense. Something I should have exercised much earlier in my relationship with your family. With that parting comment hanging in the air between us, Vivian turned and left my office, her departure as dramatic as her entrance. Through the glass wall, I watched her stride past Zoe's desk, back rigid with indignation. Only when the elevator doors closed behind her did I allow myself a moment of pure, unadulterated relief. Zoe appeared in my doorway, eyes wide. Are you okay? She looked like she was about to breathe fire on her way out. I'm fine, I assured her, surprised to find it was true. Actually, I'm better than fine. Can you call the Marshall listing and see if we can push the showing to tomorrow? There's something I need to handle this afternoon. That something was a meeting with Harrison Davis in his downtown office, where I provided a complete account of the morning's developments and my confrontation with Vivian. She'll pressure Nathan to fight for a portion of the Kensington property, Harrison predicted, making notes in his leather-bound portfolio. Even though legally she doesn't have a leg to stand on. Nathan knows the house is mine, I said. He seemed more resigned than angry when I showed him. Harrison's expression was skeptical. People can accept reality when it's presented to them directly. Then they go home, talk to family, consult lawyers, and suddenly develop a different perspective on what's fair. You think he'll challenge my ownership? I think his mother will insist on it, Harrison replied. Whether Nathan has the backbone to resist her influence remains to be seen. Based on what you've told me about your marriage, I'm not optimistic. The assessment was harsh but fair. Nathan's pattern of deferring to his mother's wishes was well established, and with the family finances in jeopardy, the pressure would be intense. What should I expect next? I asked. Officially? Their lawyer will file the divorce petition. We'll respond. Negotiations will begin regarding the division of assets. primarily the bungalow, since you've maintained separate finances otherwise. And unofficially? Harrison leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Unofficially, I expect Vivian Reed to deploy every social and financial weapon in her considerable arsenal. The Reed family may be facing financial troubles, but they still have connections, influence, and a vested interest in controlling the narrative about this divorce. Meaning you should prepare for rumors, social alienation, possibly even attempts to undermine your business. His expression was sympathetic but realistic. The Reeds have been a fixture in Portland society for generations. You're the outsider who dared to purchase a property Vivian coveted and is now divorcing their son. They won't take that lying down. I absorbed this assessment, mentally cataloging my vulnerabilities and strengths. My business is solid. My clients choose me for results, not social connections. And frankly, I've never been fully embraced by Vivian's social circle anyway. Good. That awareness will help. Harrison made another note. I suggest documenting everything from this point forward. Every interaction, every communication, every perceived slight or threat. If they decide to play dirty, we need evidence. I left Harrison's office with a clearer picture of the battlefield ahead. The drive back to the Kensington house felt like crossing a threshold, leaving behind the uncertainty of the past weeks and stepping into a future I was actively choosing. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a familiar car parked on the side street, Nathan's silver Audi. He was waiting on the front steps, looking simultaneously out of place and entitled, as if he couldn't decide whether to claim ownership of the property or remain a visitor. When I approached, he stood, hands shoved into the pockets of his tailored slacks. "Your mother paid me a visit at my office," I said by way of greeting, unlocking the front door. "I know," she told me. Nathan followed me inside without waiting for an invitation. "She's upset." I gathered that. We stood in the foyer, the afternoon light casting patterns through the stained glass onto the polished wood floor. Nathan looked around again, taking in details he might have missed during last night's revelations. "You did an amazing job." "With the restoration," he said finally. "It looks even better than the architectural plans we discussed." "Thank you." The compliment felt hollow given the circumstances, but I acknowledged it anyway. "Why are you here, Nathan?" He moved into the living room, trailing his hand along the walnut banister I'd spent weeks refinishing. "I wanted to talk without my mother present, without lawyers or property disputes or divorce terms between us." I set my purse and keys on the entry table, following him but maintaining a careful distance. "About what?" "About us. About how we got here." He turned to face me, his expression a mixture of regret and resignation. "This isn't how I imagined our marriage ending." "Did you imagine it ending?" I asked quietly. "Before your family's financial troubles, before Vivian decided I was expendable, had you already written us off?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "No, at least not consciously." He sank onto the window seat, sunlight highlighting the premature silver at his temples that I'd once found distinguished. "But I wasn't fighting for us either. I can see that now." His candor was unexpected. In our 4 years together, Nathan had rarely been this direct about our relationship, preferring to smooth over conflicts or defer difficult conversations. "Why the Kensington house?" he asked suddenly. "Of all the properties you could have purchased, why this one?" The question touched the core of what had driven my decision, the symbolic weight of the choice I'd made. Because it was mine to choose. Not your mother's selection. Not a Reed family legacy property. Not another piece of my life subject to Vivian's approval or disapproval. But you knew how much she admired this house. You knew she'd been talking about it for years. A note of accusation crept into his voice. "Yes," I acknowledged. "And that was part of the appeal, if I'm being honest. To own something Vivian wanted but couldn't have. Something beyond her control. It was childish, perhaps, but after years of being treated like an interloper in your family, it felt vindicating. Nathan nodded slowly, surprisingly accepting of this truth. "I failed you," he said after a moment. "I should have stood up to her more often, created boundaries, protected our marriage from her interference." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You should have." "Would it have made a difference?" His eyes met. Mine, searching for something, absolution perhaps, or confirmation that our marriage had been doomed regardless. I considered the question carefully, owing him the honesty he seemed genuinely to seek. "I don't know, maybe. If I had felt we were truly partners, facing your family as a united front rather than me constantly fighting for a place at the table, things might have been different." "And now?" "Now it's too late," I said gently. "You've made your choice, Nathan. You chose your family, your mother, over our marriage. And I've made mine. I choose myself, my independence, my right to a life not defined by Vivian Reed's approval." He flinched at the assessment, but didn't contradict it. "Mother wants me to fight for a portion of this property in the divorce settlement. She says since we were married when you purchased it, I have a right to claim it as marital property." So Harrison had been right. Vivian's next move had been exactly as predicted. "Is that why you're here? To stake your claim?" "No." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen countless times during our marriage. "I'm here to tell you I won't be doing that. The house is yours, Olivia. You bought it with your separate funds. You restored it with your own resources and vision. I won't contest that." The declaration was so unexpected that for a moment I couldn't respond. "Does your mother know you're taking this position?" A bitter smile crossed his face. "What do you think?" "I think Vivian Reed doesn't accept defeat gracefully," I replied. "And I think your sudden bout of integrity might be short-lived once she realizes you're not following the script." "That's not fair," he protested. "Isn't it? 4 years of watching you cave to her demands suggests otherwise." Nathan stood, abruptly, pacing the length of the living room. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under right now. The family business is collapsing. My father might face criminal charges for financial mismanagement. My mother is terrified of losing everything. The house, her social standing, the life she's built. And that justifies throwing your wife overboard to lighten the load?" I asked quietly. "No," he admitted, stopping his pacing to face me. "It doesn't. But it explains it, at least partially. I'm not proud of how I've handled this, Olivia. I'm not proud of letting my mother dictate the terms of our separation or of my own cowardice in confronting you directly." His honesty was disarming, reminding me painfully of the man I'd fallen in love with, the Nathan who could acknowledge his flaws, who seemed capable of growth and change. But I'd seen this pattern before, moments of clarity and self-awareness, followed by a swift return to the path of least resistance. "I appreciate your honesty," I said finally, "and your decision not to contest the house. But Nathan, you need to understand something. This divorce isn't just about property division or legal documents. It's about recognizing that we want fundamentally different things. You want your mother's approval and your family's acceptance more than you want an equal partnership. And I want to be more than a supporting character in the Reed family saga." He nodded slowly, his expression resigned. "I do understand that, more clearly now than ever before." He glanced around the beautifully restored space that represented my independence. "You've built something remarkable here, Liv. Not just the house, but the life you're creating for yourself. Part of me wishes I could be included in it. But you've chosen a different path," I reminded him gently. "Yes." The simple acknowledgement hung in the air between us, the definitive period at the end of our marriage. Nathan moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the ornate brass doorknob. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just for how things ended, but for all the times I didn't stand up for you. All the times I let my mother's opinions matter, more than yours. I know, I said, and found that I truly did believe him. Nathan wasn't a villain in this story, just a man who had never fully severed the apron strings, who had chosen the familiar comfort of family approval over the more challenging path of marital partnership. After he left, I moved through the house, opening windows to let the late afternoon breeze circulate. The conversation with Nathan had been unexpected, both his visit and his apparent willingness to cede any claim to the Kensington property. Whether this position would hold once Vivian applied pressure remained to be seen, but for now, it felt like a small victory in the unfolding drama of our separation. My phone chimed with a text from Maya. Dragon Lady vanquished? Need reinforcements? Or celebratory wine? I smiled, typing a response. Nathan dropped by. Surprisingly civilized. Wine definitely needed. Kensington House? 7 p.m.? Her reply was immediate. On it. Bringing the good stuff. And pizza. Homeowner gets to choose toppings. Homeowner. The word resonated with a satisfying finality. Whatever else happened in the aftermath of my marriage's collapse, I had this beautiful house, this tangible symbol of my independence, this home that was wholly mine. The confrontation I'd been dreading had gone better than expected, but Harrison's warnings echoed in my mind. This was likely just the opening salvo in what could be a protracted battle. Vivian Reed was not a woman who accepted defeat, particularly not at the hands of a daughter-in-law she had never fully embraced. Nathan's momentary rebellion against his mother's wishes might crumble under sustained pressure. The Reed family's financial desperation could drive them to more aggressive tactics. As evening settled over the Kensington house, I lit a fire in the restored hearth and prepared for Maya's arrival. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal documents to review, work commitments to fulfill, perhaps fresh attempts by Vivian to undermine my position. But tonight, I would celebrate this first small victory in reclaiming my life from the Reed. Family's influence. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 6 times, its sonorous tones resonating through rooms that had witnessed a century of Portland history and would now witness my personal renaissance, one day at a time. The formal divorce filing arrived 2 days later, delivered to my office by courier. The manila envelope sat on my desk like a ticking package, both expected and dreaded. I opened it after my last client meeting of the day, scanning the legal language that reduced 4 years of marriage to assets and liabilities, petitioner and respondent. Despite Nathan's assurances, the filing included a claim against the Kensington property, citing Oregon's equitable distribution laws and asserting that the house had been purchased during the marriage. A sticky note in my attorney's handwriting was attached to the relevant section. Call me. This contradicts your conversation. I wasn't surprised. Disappointed, perhaps, but not surprised. Nathan's moment of integrity had been fleeting, overcome by Vivian's influence or the Reed family's financial desperation, or both. I took a photo of the document and texted it to Maya with a simple caption. And so it begins. Her response was immediate and profane, followed by, "What happened to—" "I won't contest the house?" "Vivian happened," I replied. I called Harrison from my car, using the privacy of the enclosed space to discuss strategy. They're claiming the Kensington house as marital property, despite our careful documentation proving otherwise. Standard. Opening gambit, Harrison said, his tone matter of fact. They know they don't have a strong legal claim, but they're hoping to use it as leverage for other concessions. Such as? My guess. They want you to take less from the bungalow sale to compensate for keeping the Kensington property. Or they're positioning for a cash settlement. I processed this information, watching pedestrians pass on the rain-slicked sidewalk outside my office building. So what's our response? We counter with evidence of separate property, documentation of the purchase using premarital funds, and proof that Nathan was not involved in the transaction or subsequent renovations. Harrison's voice took on a harder edge, and we make it clear that any attempt to claim the Kensington house will result in a full investigation of the Reed family finances during discovery. Something I suspect they're desperate to avoid given what you've told me about their current situation. You think they're bluffing? I think they're desperate, Harrison corrected. And desperate people make desperate moves. But we have facts, documentation, and legal precedent on our side. The question is whether you want a quick, clean divorce, or whether you're prepared for a potentially ugly fight. The rain intensified, drumming against the car roof as I considered his question. I want what's rightfully mine. No more, no less. If that means a fight, so be it. Good. That's what I needed to hear. The satisfaction in Harrison's voice was evident. I'll draft our response this afternoon. In the meantime, continue. Documenting everything and forward me any communication from Nathan or his family. I ended the call feeling oddly energized. The line had been drawn, the battle joined. After years of silent accommodations and careful compromises to keep the peace with the Reed family, there was something clarifying about open conflict. The rules were clearer, the stakes defined, the adversaries identified. Driving home through Portland's evening traffic, I found myself mentally cataloging the ways the Reeds might retaliate beyond legal challenges. Vivian's social influence could impact my business if she chose to weaponize it, steering potential clients away, spreading rumors about my professional ethics or financial stability. Nathan's architectural connections overlapped with my real estate network. Would he maintain professional courtesy or yield to family pressure there as well? By the time I reached the Kensington house, I had formulated a preliminary defense strategy. Tomorrow, I would contact my most loyal clients to reinforce those relationships. I would reach out to my professional association about featuring my recent historic restoration projects in their newsletter, creating positive publicity to counter any potential rumors. And I would accelerate the remaining renovations on the Kensington property, transforming it completely into my vision, a home that bore no trace of Reed family influence or expectations. As I unlocked the front door, the security system chimed. A welcome. The house felt different tonight, not just a sanctuary from my failing marriage, but a fortress I was prepared to defend. I moved through the rooms, turning on lights, dispelling shadows, reclaiming each space as my own territory. In the study, a room I'd specifically designed with built-in bookshelves and a window seat perfect for reading, I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it in a silent toast to the woman I was becoming. Not Olivia Reed, dutiful daughter-in-law, and perpetual outsider, but Olivia Chen, homeowner, successful professional, and architect of her own destiny. The grandfather clock chimed 8 times, marking not just the hour, but the beginning of a new chapter in my story, one written entirely in my own hand. The next 3 weeks unfolded in a flurry of legal documents, strategic meetings, and the gradual reshaping of my life post-Nathan. Harrison Davis proved every bit the formidable attorney I'd hoped, responding to the Reed family's claim on the Kensington house with a meticulously documented rebuttal that left little room for argument. Our countermotion included bank statements tracing my commission from the Palmer estate sale, records of the separate account I'd maintained throughout my marriage, and sworn statements from the contractors who'd worked on the restoration, all confirming that the purchase and renovation had been entirely my undertaking. Their claim is purely tactical, Harrison assured me during our review meeting. They know they can't actually win on the merits, but they're hoping to pressure you into concessions elsewhere. I looked up from the stack of documents spread across his conference table. What kind of concessions? Based on their latest communication, they want you to forfeit your share of the bungalow proceeds. Harrison's expression remained neutral, but I detected a hint of satisfaction in his voice. They're offering to drop the claim against the Kensington property if you'll sign over your interest in the marital home. The proposal was so absurd I almost laughed. They want me to give up my half of a property that's genuinely jointly owned in exchange for them not pursuing a fraudulent claim against a property that's legally mine? That's about the size of it, Harrison confirmed. It's a desperate move, but not entirely surprising given what you've told me about their financial situation. I thought about the bungalow, the first home Nathan and I had purchased together, the place where I'd once believed we were building a life. Under normal circumstances, I might have considered relinquishing my claim as a goodwill gesture. But these weren't normal circumstances, and the Reed family had forfeited any claim to my goodwill. Counter with this, I said, making a quick calculation. I'll consider releasing my interest in the bungalow for a cash payment equal to 30% above my share of fair market value. Harrison raised an eyebrow. That's aggressive. It's business, I corrected. If they want something from me, they need to make it worth my while. Besides, I doubt they'll accept. This is more about establishing that I won't be intimidated or manipulated. He made a note in his portfolio. I'll convey your terms. Don't be surprised if Vivian herself reaches out once she receives them. She strikes me as someone who prefers direct confrontation when formal channels don't yield the desired results. Harrison's prediction proved accurate with almost alarming precision. The very evening after our counteroffer was delivered, my doorbell rang as I was preparing dinner in the Kensington house's newly renovated kitchen. Through the security camera, I saw Vivian Reed standing on my porch, her posture radiating indignation even through the digital display. I considered ignoring her but decided that confrontation was inevitable. Better to have it on my terms, in my space, with the clear power differential of her as the visitor seeking entry to my domain. Vivian, I greeted her, opening the door, just wide enough to make it clear I wasn't inviting her inside. This is unexpected. Is it? She looked past me into the foyer, her gaze cataloging details with the critical assessment I'd come to recognize over years of family dinners. I think we both know why I'm here. Actually, I don't. Any communication regarding the divorce should go through our attorneys. I remained in the doorway, one hand on the heavy oak door. This isn't about legal documents, Olivia. This is about family. Her emphasis on the word carried a wealth of implication. May I come in? I'd prefer not to conduct this conversation on your porch for the neighborhood to witness. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside, allowing her entry, but leading her no further than the foyer. The grandfather clock ticked steadily in the background, marking the seconds of this unexpected standoff. Your counter-demand is outrageous, Vivian stated without preamble. 30% above market value? For a property you've contributed minimally to? I've contributed exactly half of the mortgage payments for the past 4 years, I corrected. My name is on the deed alongside Nathan's. Legally, I'm entitled to half its value. Ah, legal entitlement and moral right are not always aligned, Vivian said, her voice taking on the lecturing tone she used when she believed she was imparting wisdom. Nathan is facing extraordinary circumstances. The family is in crisis. Your inflexibility is disappointing. The familiar disappointment card. How many times had she deployed it during my marriage? Disappointing that I wasn't more active in her preferred charities. Disappointing that Nathan and I hadn't produced grandchildren on her timeline. Disappointing that my background wasn't quite what she'd envisioned for her son. I'm not responsible for the Reed family's financial crisis, I said evenly. Just as I wasn't responsible for the family birthday celebrations, holiday traditions, or social obligations you constantly reminded me I was failing to uphold properly. I'm done being measured against standards designed specifically for me to fall short. Vivian's expression hardened, the veneer of civilized negotiation slipping. You've quite misunderstood your position, Olivia. The Reed family has connections throughout Portland. Connections that could significantly impact your little real estate business. Do you really think clients will continue to trust you when they hear how you've behaved during this divorce? The threat was as clear as it was predictable. Harrison had warned me to expect exactly this type of intimidation. "Are you threatening me, Vivian?" I kept my voice calm, almost curious. "I'm explaining reality," she replied. "Actions have consequences. You're sudden. Independence may feel empowering, but it comes at a cost." I studied her face, the carefully maintained complexion that belied her 60-some years, the rigid control with which she held herself, the absolute certainty that her perspective was the only valid one. For the first time, I saw not an intimidating matriarch but a desperate woman watching her carefully constructed world crumble. "I'm well aware of consequences," I said quietly. "I've spent 4 years experiencing the consequences of trying to meet your impossible standards. The consequences of watching my husband consistently choose his mother's approval over his wife's happiness. The consequences of surrendering pieces of myself to fit into a space that was deliberately designed to exclude me." Vivian's mouth tightened into a thin line. "This self-pitying narrative does you no credit. You married into a family with traditions and expectations." "I married Nathan," I interrupted, "not the Reed family dynasty. And let's be clear, you're not here because you're concerned about Nathan's well-being or even the family's financial situation. You're here because you can't stand that I own the Kensington house, the property you coveted for years. You're here because, for once, something you want is completely beyond your control." The direct hit landed with visible impact. Vivian's composure slipped momentarily, revealing the raw truth of my assessment before she recovered. "You know nothing about my motivations," she said coldly. "I've only ever acted in the best interests of my family." "Including when you orchestrated my exclusion from that family?" I asked. "Including when you pressured Nathan to end our marriage without even attempting to resolve our issues? Was that in his best interest or yours?" "Nathan made his own decision," Vivian insisted, though a flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, crossed her face. "I merely supported him through a difficult time." "We both know that's not true," I said gently, almost sympathetically. "Nathan has never made an important decision without your guidance. It's why our marriage was doomed. From the start, there were always 3 people in it, and I was consistently outvoted." The grandfather clock chimed the half-hour, breaking the tense silence that followed my statement. Vivian glanced toward the sound, her gaze lingering on the antique timepiece. "That's a Reed family heirloom," she said suddenly, recognition dawning on her face. "It belonged to Nathan's great-grandfather. How did you come to possess it?" I smiled slightly. "I purchased it at the Eastmoreland estate auction last spring, the one you couldn't attend because you were in New York visiting Rachel." "That's impossible. Those pieces were meant to stay in the family." Her voice had taken on a strange, almost disbelieving quality. "Apparently, whoever consigned it to auction felt differently," I replied. "It needed significant restoration. The movement was damaged, the case had water stains. I had it repaired by a specialist in historic timepieces." Vivian stared at the clock as if seeing a ghost, and in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. The Reed family's financial troubles weren't a recent development. They had been quietly selling off assets for some time, perhaps hoping to address their fiscal problems before they became public knowledge. "How many other Reed family heirlooms have found their way to auction houses, Vivian?" I asked quietly. "How long has the family been in financial trouble?" Her gaze snapped back to me, sharp with warning. "You're overstepping, Olivia. What happens within the Reed family is not your concern. Except when you're trying to claim my house or force me to give up my legal share of the bungalow," I pointed out. Then suddenly, I'm expected to make sacrifices for the family that never truly accepted me. The standoff between us had shifted, the power dynamic altered by this new understanding. Whatever financial pressures the Reed family faced, They were clearly more severe and long-standing than even Nathan had admitted. "My offer stands," I said, moving toward the front door to signal the end of our conversation. 30% above market value for my share of the bungalow. Otherwise, we proceed with a standard division of assets through the courts. The Kensington house remains off the table entirely. Vivian gathered herself, adjusting her cashmere wrap with a practiced gesture of composure. "You think you've won something here, don't you? But this isn't over, Olivia. Not by a long measure." "It could be," I suggested, holding the door open. "You could accept that Nathan and I are divorcing, that the Kensington house is mine, and that the most efficient path forward is a clean, fair division of our actual marital assets. No drama, no social warfare, no attempts at intimidation. Just a business transaction concluding a relationship that clearly wasn't working for either party." "You underestimate what's at stake," Vivian said, pausing on the threshold. "This isn't merely about property or money, it's about legacy. Something I wouldn't expect you to understand." The comment was meant to sting, to remind me of my outsider status, but it had lost its power to wound. "Goodbye, Vivian. Please direct any further communication through Harrison Davis." I closed the door on whatever retort she might have made, engaging the security system with a decisive press of the keypad. Through the side window, I watched her walk stiffly to her car, her straight back and measured pace betraying no emotion to casual observers. Only when she was inside her vehicle did her composure falter, a moment of slumped shoulders quickly corrected, visible through the windshield before she drove away. I leaned against the closed door, processing the encounter. Vivian's visit had confirmed what Harrison suspected. The Reed family was growing desperate, willing to risk direct confrontation rather than work through proper channels. The revelation about the grandfather clock suggested their financial troubles might provide leverage I hadn't previously considered. My phone chimed with a text from Maya. "Still on for dinner? Made fresh focaccia and that roasted vegetable pasta. You like?" I smiled, grateful for the normalcy of friendship amid the divorce drama. "Absolutely. But you might want to bring an extra bottle of wine. Just had a visit from Hurricane Vivian." Her response was immediate. "On my way with reinforcements. Prepare to debrief." While waiting for Maya, I returned to the kitchen and the dinner preparations I'd abandoned. The practical rhythm of chopping vegetables and stirring sauce helped settle my thoughts, transforming my encounter with Vivian from an emotional confrontation to a strategic data point. By the time Maya arrived, bearing promised focaccia and additional wine, I had formulated a new approach to the divorce proceedings. One that would use the Reed family's apparent financial desperation to my advantage, without stooping to Vivian's level of personal attacks or social manipulation. "So," Maya said, uncorking the wine while I finished the salad, "the dragon lady herself deigned to visit your lair. What was her opening move? Threats, bribery, or guilt?" "All three, in succession," I replied, bringing the salad to the kitchen island where we'd eat. Plus a not-so-subtle reminder that the Reed family could damage my business if I don't cooperate. Maya's expression darkened. "She threatened your livelihood? That's crossing a line." "It's predictable," I corrected, serving us both. "Vivian operates on power and influence. Now that she's lost her hold over me personally, she's looking for other pressure points." "Can she actually hurt your business?" I considered the question as we settled onto the bar stools. "Short term, possibly. The Reeds do have connections with some of Portland's older families, but most of my clients choose me because I get results, not because of who I'm married to. And my specialty is historic properties and architectural preservation. Even Vivian can't change my track record in that area." Maya tore a piece of focaccia, the aromatic steam rising between us. "So what's your next move? Please tell me it involves some form of epic revenge. I've been practicing my evil laugh in preparation." I laughed despite the tension of the evening. "Nothing so dramatic. but I am going to instruct Harrison to request full financial disclosure from the Reed family as part of the divorce proceedings, specifically, any sales of assets over the past 5 years. You think they've been hiding money? Maya asked, her expression serious despite her earlier joke. Not hiding it, spending it or losing it, I clarified. The grandfather clock Vivian recognized. It's apparently a Reed family heirloom that shouldn't have been available at auction. I'm betting there's a pattern of sales that tells a story different from the recent financial crisis Nathan described. Maya's eyes widened with understanding. You think they've been in trouble longer than they've admitted? That this isn't just about some bad investments Walter made recently? Exactly. And if that's true, it changes the dynamics of the divorce negotiation. They're not just trying to protect assets from creditors, they're potentially trying to reclaim assets they've already lost. I took a sip of wine, the pieces falling into place as I articulated my theory. The push for Nathan to divorce me, the claim against the Kensington house, the pressure to surrender my share of the bungalow, it's all part of a larger, desperate attempt to consolidate whatever resources are left. Maya looked thoughtful. Including you. As long as you were Nathan's wife, you were a Reed family resource. Your income, your business connections, your ability to manage their social events and maintain appearances. The assessment was uncomfortably accurate. I had been an asset in the Reed family portfolio, valued for my practical contributions rather than accepted as a true family member. The realization should have been painful, but instead, it felt clarifying. The final piece locking into place to complete a picture I'd been struggling to see clearly. I need to talk to someone who might have insight into the Reed family finances, I said, thinking aloud. Someone who would know the real story, not just what Vivian or Nathan has shared. Maya raised an eyebrow. Who did you have in mind? Diane Foster, I replied, the plan forming as I spoke. Our neighbor from the bungalow. She's lived in that neighborhood for 40 years and is friends with half the old Portland families. She also serves on the Historic Preservation Board with Walter. If anyone has heard whispers about the Reed family finances, it would be Diane. The retired teacher with the perfect roses and terrifying knowledge of everyone's business? Maya grinned. Perfect source. When will you talk to her? Tomorrow, I decided. I'll bring her some of those almond cookies she loves from Delphina's bakery. Diane's sweet tooth is directly proportional to her willingness to share information. The next morning, armed with a box of almond cookies and a carefully considered approach, I made my way to Diane Foster's Craftsman bungalow 3 doors down from my former marital home. At 72, Diane remained one of the neighborhood's most active residents, tending her award-winning rose garden, organizing the annual block party, and serving on various civic committees alongside her retirement from a 30-year teaching career. She answered her door on the second ring, silver hair neatly coiffed despite the early hour. Olivia, what a lovely surprise. I heard you'd moved out rather suddenly. News traveled fast in the West Hills neighborhood. I smiled warmly. I have, yes. But I couldn't leave without saying goodbye to my favorite neighbor. I brought your favorite cookies from Delphina's. Diane's face lit up. You dear girl. Come in, come in. I've just made a pot of Earl Grey that would pair perfectly. Her living room was exactly as I remembered. Immaculately kept, but comfortably lived in. Filled with books, framed photographs, and the carefully curated mementos of a life well lived. I settled onto the floral sofa while she prepared a tray with teacups that looked delicate enough to have graced a Victorian parlor. Now then, she said, pouring the tea with practiced precision. I don't want to pry, but the neighborhood has been positively buzzing with speculation. Vivian Reed has been seen coming and going from your house at all hours, directing moving men and landscapers as if she owned the place. I suppressed a surge of irritation at this information. Of course, Vivian would waste no time staking her claim on the bungalow, regardless of the legal niceties still being negotiated. Nathan and I are divorcing, I confirmed, deciding directness was the best approach with Diane. It's been a difficult time, but I've moved to a new home and am focusing on moving forward. Diane's sharp blue eyes assessed me over the rim of her teacup. Not entirely unexpected, if I may say so. The Reed family has always been particular about who joins their ranks. Eleanor Whitmore was the only one of Nathan's girlfriends Vivian ever truly approved of, and that was largely because Eleanor's grandmother was Vivian's sorority sister at Reed College. The information was new to me. Nathan had mentioned dating someone named Eleanor briefly before me, but never with any suggestion that she had been Vivian's preferred choice. "You seem to know the Reed family well," I observed, selecting an opening for the conversation I really wanted to have. Diane smiled slightly. "I've lived in Portland all my life, dear. The old families here are like a complex ecosystem, all interconnected, with their own hierarchies and symbiotic relationships. The Reeds have been prominent for generations, though perhaps less securely in recent years." I seized the opening. Less securely? I had the impression they were one of Portland's most established families. "Oh, they are, historically speaking." Diane selected an almond cookie, examining it appreciatively before taking a delicate bite. But status and financial stability aren't always aligned. Walter Reed made some unfortunate investments about a decade ago. That business with the riverfront development that ran afoul of environmental regulations. Quite the scandal at the time, though it was hushed up rather efficiently. This predated my relationship with Nathan by several years. "I had no idea," I said truthfully. "Few outside the inner circles would," Diane acknowledged. "The Reeds are masters of maintaining appearances, but there have been signs for those who know where to look. The vacation home in Cannon Beach sold quietly 3 years ago. Vivian resigned from chairing the Symphony Gala, a position she'd held for 15 years, citing time constraints. But the real issue was the expected personal donation that accompanies the role." I thought about the timing. 3 years ago would have been shortly after Nathan and I married. Had the Reed family's hopes for my professional success been partially motivated by financial necessity rather than mere social ambition? "Walter still serves on several boards," I pointed out, testing Diane's knowledge. "Indeed, but not the ones with significant financial commitments. And have you noticed how often the family events have shifted to being hosted at restaurants or clubs rather than at their home? Vivian used to be famous for her elaborate dinner parties." Now that Diane mentioned it, I realized the pattern had been there throughout my relationship with Nathan. The Reed family entertained extensively, but almost always at venues rather than at their historic home in the West Hills. I had attributed it to convenience rather than necessity. "I had wondered about some recent developments," I said carefully. "There seemed to be financial concerns that Nathan only recently disclosed." Diane looked sympathetic. "My dear, the Reed family has been swimming upstream financially for years. Walter's investment firm has lost several major clients. Rachel's husband's family had to step in to purchase their home when the Reed family trust couldn't provide the promised down payment. Nathan's architectural practice is well regarded, but hardly lucrative in the early years. The only thing maintaining their position has been the careful management of appearances." The picture Diane painted aligned with my emerging understanding, but filled in crucial details. The Reed family's desperation wasn't just about recent setbacks. It was the culmination of years of financial decline carefully concealed behind social prominence. "Thank you for being so forthright, Diane," I said sincerely. "It helps make sense of some things that have happened recently." "I hope I haven't overstepped," she replied, though her expression suggested she regretted nothing about our candid exchange. "I've always found that clarity, however uncomfortable, is preferable to confusion, particularly when navigating difficult transitions." I smiled, appreciating her wisdom. I couldn't agree more. As I drove away from Diane's home, the pieces continued to fall into place. The Reed family's financial precariousness explained not only their desperate grasp for the bungalow's equity, but also the vehemence of their reaction to the Kensington house. My purchase and restoration of a property Vivian had coveted wasn't just an affront to her social aspirations. It represented a financial opportunity slipping from the family's grasp. With this new understanding, I called Harrison from my car. "I need you to focus on something specific in the financial disclosure requests," I said when he answered. "Look for evidence of asset liquidation predating Walter's recent investment troubles. I believe the Reed family has been in financial decline for years, not months." "That would explain their aggressive stance on the bungalow," Harrison noted. "If they're truly desperate, they may be willing to negotiate more reasonably once they realize we understand their actual position." "Exactly," I agreed. "They're operating from a place of panic, not strength. If we can acknowledge that reality, without exploiting it cruelly, we might find a path to resolution that doesn't require dragging this out through the courts." After ending the call, I drove not to my office or the Kensington house, but to a small park overlooking the Willamette River. I needed space to think, to process all I had learned and formulate a plan that would secure my interests while potentially offering the Reed family a dignified exit from our entanglement. Sitting on a bench watching the river flow past, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Vindication that my instincts about the Reed family dynamics had been accurate. Sadness for Nathan caught in a web partly of his own making, and a growing certainty that I had escaped a situation that would have eventually crushed me had I remained. The path forward was becoming clear. I would use my knowledge not as a weapon, but as a tool to craft a clean, definitive break that would allow all parties to move on with minimal additional damage. The Reed family might never acknowledge my generosity in this approach, but I would know, and that knowledge would be another brick in the foundation of the new life I was building for myself. I pulled out my phone one more time to text Maya. Diane confirmed what we suspected. Reed family. Finances have been struggling for years. Ready to implement Plan B, wine and strategy session tonight? Her response came quickly. Absolutely. I'll bring the whiteboard for proper plotting. This calls for visual aids. I smiled, grateful again for the steady presence of true friendship amid the upheaval of divorce. Whatever challenges lay ahead in finalizing my separation from the Reed family, I would face them with clear eyes and the confidence that comes from standing on solid ground, in my home, living my truth without apology or compromise. The strategy session with Maya that evening crystallized my approach to the next phase of the divorce. Armed with Diane Foster's insights and Harrison's legal expertise, I decided to shift from defensive resistance to a carefully calibrated offensive position. "You need to meet with Nathan directly," Maya suggested as she finished sketching our flowchart on the portable whiteboard she'd brought to the Kensington house. "Not Vivian, not the lawyers, Nathan himself. He's the weak link in their unified front." I considered her advice, swirling the remains of my wine thoughtfully. "You think he'd meet with me without legal representation present?" "I think he's probably drowning in his mother's intensity and looking for any lifeline," Maya replied. "Based on everything you've told me, Nathan isn't the architect of this aggressive strategy. He's just going along with it because that's his default setting with Vivian." She had a point. Throughout our marriage, Nathan had demonstrated an almost pathological avoidance of direct conflict with his mother, preferring to accommodate her demands rather than assert boundaries. If Vivian was indeed the driving force behind the unreasonable legal tactics, appealing directly to Nathan might offer a path toward resolution. "What would I say to him?" I asked, thinking aloud. "We've already established that the marriage is over. I've already shown him the Kensington house and explained my position." Maya tapped the whiteboard marker against her palm. "You'd offer clarity and dignity, two things I'm guessing are in short supply in the Reed household right now. You know, the real state of their finances. You could lay out a straightforward proposal that acknowledges their situation without exploiting it. A face-saving exit," I murmured, the approach taking shape in my mind. I offer terms that protect my interests, but allow them to retreat without public embarrassment. Exactly. Maya nodded emphatically. The Reed family's entire identity is built on maintaining appearances. Give them a way to end this quietly, and they might actually take it, especially if the alternative is having their financial problems exposed through extended court proceedings. I picked up my phone, staring at Nathan's contact information. Despite everything, I found myself reluctant to reach out directly, uncertain whether this strategy represented wisdom or naive hope that there remained some kernel of the man I'd married beneath the layers of family obligation and maternal dominance. "What's the worst that could happen?" Maya prompted gently. "He says no. You proceed with Harrison's approach and nothing changes. But if he says yes, we might avoid months of legal battles and tens of thousands in attorney fees," I finished. With a deep breath, I typed a message. "We need to talk, just the two of us. No lawyers, no family. Can you meet tomorrow?" Nathan's response came surprisingly quickly. "Where and when?" I suggested a coffee shop in the Pearl District, neutral. Territory far from both the Reed family home and my new sanctuary at the Kensington house. He agreed to meet at 10 a.m., adding only, "Thank you for reaching out." Maya stayed another hour, helping me refine my approach and role-playing potential reactions from Nathan. By the time she left, I felt prepared for the conversation ahead. Clear on my objectives, realistic about the potential outcomes, and centered in my own worth regardless of how Nathan responded. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in weeks. Perhaps because for the first time since the marriage's collapse, I felt truly in control of my path forward. The Kensington house embraced me in its solid quietude, its century-old beams, and craftsmanship a testament to endurance through changing times. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, one of those perfect Portland autumn days when the city seems to shimmer with golden light. I dressed carefully in a charcoal gray wrap dress that projected professional confidence without the armor-like quality of a business suit. This meeting wasn't a negotiation between adversaries, but a conversation between two people who had once shared a life and now needed to disentangle with minimal additional damage. Brew & Bean was moderately busy when I arrived 10 minutes early, the morning rush of commuters thinning into the scattered freelancers and remote workers who would occupy the tables until lunch. I selected a corner booth that offered privacy, without isolation, and ordered a cappuccino, using the waiting time to center myself for the conversation ahead. Nathan arrived precisely at 10, punctuality having always been one of his more reliable qualities. He looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from prolonged stress rather than simple lack of sleep. His normally impeccable appearance showed subtle signs of neglect, his hair slightly longer than his usual precise cut, his button-down shirt bearing the faint wrinkles of having been pulled from the dryer without proper ironing. "Olivia," he greeted me, sliding into the booth opposite me. "Thanks for suggesting this." "Thanks for coming," I replied, studying him with newfound objectivity. The man across from me had been my husband, my partner, my future. And yet sitting here now, he seemed almost like a stranger. Familiar features rearranged into someone I didn't quite recognize. He ordered black coffee from the server who approached, then turned back to me with an attempt at a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "So, you wanted to talk." I nodded, waiting until the server had retreated before speaking. "I think we need to find a better way forward than what's currently happening. The aggressive legal posturing, the property claims, Vivian's attempts at intimidation, it's not helping anyone." Nathan had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Things have gotten complicated. They've gotten unnecessarily adversarial," I corrected gently. "Nathan, I know about the Reed family finances, not just the recent troubles your father mentioned, but the longer pattern of decline over the past decade." His expression shifted to wariness. "What exactly do you think you know?" I know about the riverfront development scandal from 8 years ago. I know the Cannon Beach house was sold 3 years ago. I know Rachel's in-laws had to purchase their home when the family trust couldn't provide the promised down payment. I kept my voice low, maintaining eye contact to ensure he understood I wasn't bluffing. I know the Reed family has been managing appearances rather than addressing reality for quite some time. Nathan's shoulders sagged visibly, the pretense of family prosperity crumbling in the face of specific details. How did you— Portland is a small city in many ways, I said, sparing him the question. The old families talk, and not everyone is as invested in maintaining the Reed mythology as your mother. He stared into his coffee for a long moment before responding. It's worse than you know, he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Dad's not just facing bankruptcy. There might be criminal charges, securities fraud, misrepresentation to investors, commingling of funds. Mother doesn't know the full extent yet. Dad's been sheltering her from the worst of it. The revelation was worse than I'd anticipated. I'm sorry, Nathan. Truly. He looked up, searching my face for the sincerity behind my words. Are you? Of course I am. Whatever's happened between us, I never wanted to see your family destroyed. I meant it. Despite everything, I took no pleasure in Walter Reed's potential criminal exposure or the family's financial collapse. Mother is convinced you'll use this against us. Nathan's hands wrapped around his coffee mug as if seeking warmth. That you'll ensure everyone in Portland knows the Reed family is broke and disgraced. I have no interest in public humiliation, I assured him, which is why I wanted to meet with you directly. I think there's a better path forward. For everyone involved. Hope flickered briefly in his eyes. What kind of path? A clean, dignified separation with fair terms that protect both our interests. I leaned forward slightly. Nathan, I don't want the bungalow. I have my home now. I don't want to drag your family through public legal proceedings that will expose financial details better kept private. I just want to move forward with my life. Then what are you proposing? Simple, straightforward terms, I explained. I relinquish any claim to the bungalow, allowing your family to sell it quickly, without complications. In exchange, you formally withdraw any claim against the Kensington property and agree to a clean division of our personal assets. Basically, we each keep what we brought into the marriage, plus an equitable split of joint purchases. Nathan looked suspicious, as if searching for the hidden agenda in my proposal. That's it? You're willing to walk away from your share of the bungalow's equity? With one additional condition, I clarified. I want a formal acknowledgement in writing that I purchased and restored the Kensington house independently, with my separate funds, and that neither you nor the Reed family has any claim to it whatsoever. Not now, not in the future. Understanding dawned in his expression. You want protection from future claims if the family's financial situation changes. Exactly. I need to know this chapter is fully closed, with no possibility of revisiting these issues later. I held his gaze steadily. It's not unreasonable given the circumstances. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, considering the proposal. His coffee cooled untouched before him as he worked through the implications. Mother won't like it, he finally said. She's convinced the Kensington house should be part of the settlement. The Kensington house was never on the table, Nathan. It's my separate property, purchased with my separate funds, and no court would rule otherwise. I kept my tone matter of fact rather than confrontational. What I'm offering is a pragmatic solution that avoids prolonged legal battles none of us can afford, financially or emotionally. He nodded slowly, conceding the point. I'll need to discuss it with the family attorney. Of course, but Nathan, I want you to consider something. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. This might be a moment to decide for yourself, without filtering everything through Vivian's perspective. What do you think is the right path forward? The question seemed to catch him off guard, as if the concept of making a major decision without his mother's input was foreign territory. I think your proposal is reasonable, he admitted after a moment. More than reasonable, given how things have unfolded. Then advocate for it, I encouraged. Not as the Reed family representative, but as Nathan, a man finalizing a divorce and looking toward his own future. Something shifted in his expression. A subtle straightening of his posture, a newfound resolve in his eyes. I will. You're right. This has become unnecessarily complicated. We should be able to end our marriage with dignity. For the first time in our conversation, I saw a glimpse of the Nathan I had fallen in love with. Thoughtful, reasonable, capable of seeing beyond the narrow confines of Reed family dogma. It was a bittersweet recognition, this evidence that the man I had believed in still existed somewhere beneath the layers of family obligation and maternal deference. Thank you, I said simply. We spent the next half hour discussing practical matters, which joint purchases each of us would retain, the timeline for finalizing the divorce, how to handle shared social connections in the aftermath. The conversation was surprisingly civil, almost collegial, as if the acknowledgement of the marriage's end had freed us both to interact as respectful acquaintances rather than wounded spouses. As we prepared to leave, Nathan hesitated, vulnerability replacing the businesslike demeanor he'd maintained throughout our discussion of terms. I am sorry, Olivia, not just for how things ended, but for how they were all along. You deserved better than a husband who couldn't stand up to his mother. The apology was unexpected, and I sensed genuine. We both deserved better, I replied gently. A marriage shouldn't require one person to constantly diminish themselves to maintain peace. He nodded, acknowledging the truth in my assessment. The Kensington house? It's beautiful. I saw that even in my shock the other night. You've created something remarkable there. Thank you. I accepted the compliment with a small smile. It's become more than a house to me. It's a symbol of the life I'm building now. I hope that life brings you happiness, Nathan said, and I believed he meant it. Despite everything, I never wanted you to be unhappy. I know, I assured him, and that too was true. Nathan's failings as a husband hadn't stemmed from malice, but from weakness, a distinction that allowed me to release resentment while still recognizing the relationship had been fundamentally flawed. We parted with an awkward handshake that evolved into a brief, impersonal hug, the appropriate farewell between people who had once shared everything and would soon share nothing. I watched him walk away, his shoulders squared with what looked like determination, and hoped he would find the strength to advocate for our agreed-upon resolution, despite the resistance he would undoubtedly face from Vivian. I texted Harrison as soon as Nathan was out of sight, summarizing our conversation and the terms we had discussed. His response was cautiously optimistic. Good framework. Let's see if he follows through. I'll draft the agreement for review once we hear from their side. The next 3 days passed in a strange limbo of anticipation. I threw myself into work, scheduling additional property showings and finalizing a significant sale that had been in negotiation for weeks. Each evening, I returned to the Kensington house and continued the methodical process of making it truly mine, hanging artwork I'd collected over the years, arranging books on the library shelves, planting bulbs in the garden beds that would bloom in spring regardless of how the divorce proceedings unfolded. On the 4th day, Harrison called while I was between client meetings. We've received a response from the Reed family attorney, he said without preamble. They've accepted your proposal with one modification. They want a non-disclosure agreement regarding the family's financial situation. I considered this addition, unsurprised by the request. That seems reasonable, provided it's mutual. I don't want them discussing my business or personal affairs either. Already stipulated that In my response, Harrison assured me, if all parties agree, we could have this wrapped up within 2 weeks. The timeline was almost startling after weeks of contentious negotiations and legal maneuvering. Nathan must have been persuasive, I mused, or reality finally penetrated. The Reed family bubble, Harrison suggested dryly. Either way, this is a positive development. I'll send over the draft agreement this afternoon for your review. After ending the call, I found myself standing in the middle of my office, a peculiar sense of lightness spreading through me. The path to finalizing the divorce had suddenly cleared. The obstacles I'd been bracing to overcome, apparently removed by Nathan's intervention or the Reed family's belated recognition of their untenable position. I texted Maya with the update. They accepted the terms. Divorce could be final in 2 weeks. Her response bubbled with characteristic enthusiasm. Victory! This calls for a proper celebration. Dinner at Luciana's tonight? My treat. I smiled at her excitement, but felt strangely subdued. The impending resolution represented practical success, but also the definitive end of a chapter in my life. A chapter that had begun with such hope and possibility before deteriorating into disappointment and constraint. While I had no regrets about ending my marriage, I acknowledged the quiet grief that accompanied even the most necessary conclusions. Rain check on Luciana's? I replied. I think I need a quiet night at home to process. But definitely celebrating soon. Maya's understanding was immediate. Absolutely. Self-care first. I'm here when you need me. That evening, I walked through each room of the Kensington house with a glass of wine, mentally cataloging the transformation from the empty shell I'd purchased to the vibrant home it had become. The original woodwork glowed with the results of careful restoration. The updated kitchen balanced historic character with modern functionality. The gardens were taking shape according to the vision I'd developed during those secret planning sessions. Every decision represented a choice made solely according to my preferences. Every restored detail reflected my personal aesthetic, rather than a compromise designed to accommodate Nathan's tastes or Vivian's expectations. The house had become the physical manifestation of my reclaimed autonomy. Beautiful, not despite the absence of Reed family influence, but because of it. The grandfather clock, the unwitting catalyst for my understanding of the Reed family's financial reality, chimed 9 times as I settled into the window seat in the library. Outside, the lights of Portland created a glittering backdrop against the autumn darkness. Inside, warm lamplight illuminated the space I had created for myself, a sanctuary built on self-determination and newfound clarity. My phone chimed with an incoming text. Nathan, papers are signed on our end. Harrison should receive them tomorrow. Thank you for suggesting a better way forward. I responded simply, thank you for being willing to find middle ground. I wish you well, Nathan. His final text arrived moments later. Mother wanted me to fight harder. I finally realized this isn't her divorce. It's mine. Maybe that's a lesson I should have learned years ago. I didn't reply, recognizing the comment as a reflection meant more for himself than for me. Whatever growth Nathan might experience from this situation would unfold in its own time, separate from my journey forward. The following morning, Harrison confirmed receipt of the signed documents from the Reed family attorney. Everything looks in order, he reported. They've accepted all terms, including the mutual non-disclosure and the formal acknowledgement regarding the Kensington property. I've scheduled the final hearing for next Thursday at 9 a.m. Your presence is required, but it should be brief and straightforward. Will Nathan be there? I asked, unsure whether I hoped for a final face-to-face closure or preferred to complete this process without another emotional encounter. The attorney indicated he would attend, Harrison confirmed. But given the uncontested nature of the filing, there shouldn't be any drama. Just a formality to make everything official. Good, I said, feeling a curious mixture of relief and melancholy. The sooner we can all move forward, the better. The week leading up to the final hearing passed in a blur of client meetings, property showings, and quiet evenings at the Kensington house. Maya checked in daily, offering support and distraction in equal measure. My parents called from their retirement community in Arizona, their concern evident even as they respected my assurance that I was handling the situation well. "We're proud of you, honey," my father said near the end of our conversation. "Not just for how you're managing this difficult time, but for the strong, independent woman you've always been. The Reeds never deserved you." His unwavering support brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." "Your mother and I are here whenever you need us," he continued. "And we're looking forward to seeing this famous house of yours when we visit next month." "I can't wait to show it to you," I replied truthfully. "It's becoming exactly what I always envisioned." The night before the final hearing, I found myself unable to sleep despite my best efforts at maintaining a normal routine. Around midnight, I abandoned the pretense of rest and descended to the kitchen, making a cup of chamomile tea to soothe my unexpected restlessness. Cup in hand, I wandered through the quiet house, my footsteps echoing softly on the hardwood floors. Tomorrow would mark the official end of my marriage, the legal severance of ties to Nathan and the Reed family. While the emotional disconnection had occurred weeks earlier, there was something profound about the formality awaiting me in the morning. A threshold between past and future that required acknowledgement. In the library, I curled into the window seat that had become my favorite spot for reflection. The city lights blurred slightly through the wavy glass of the original windows, creating a dreamlike quality that matched my contemplative mood. My marriage was ending, but my life was continuing on a path I had chosen with clear eyes and firm resolve. The grandfather clock struck 1, its resonant chime marking not just the hour, but a personal milestone in my journey. Whatever happened, in the courtroom tomorrow, I would face it as Olivia Chen, not as Nathan Reed's wife or Vivian Reed's disappointment of a daughter-in-law, but as myself, whole and sufficient. With that thought providing comfort, I finally returned to bed and slept deeply until morning. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, dressed in a navy blue suit that projected calm professionalism. Harrison met me in the lobby, briefcase in hand and confidence in his bearing. "Everything's in order," he assured me. "Judge Winters is presiding. She's fair and efficient. Given the uncontested nature of our filing, this should be straightforward." We checked in with the clerk and took seats in the designated courtroom, where a handful of other couples and their attorneys waited for their own divorce proceedings. The atmosphere was subdued, but not somber. A practical space for concluding legal relationships rather than a theater for emotional drama. Nathan arrived 5 minutes before our scheduled time, accompanied by a gray-haired attorney I recognized from Reed family events, but had never formally met. To my surprise and relief, Vivian was nowhere to be seen. Nathan nodded a greeting from across the room but maintained a respectful distance, seemingly understanding the importance of boundaries in this final interaction. When our case was called, we approached the bench together, Nathan and his attorney on one side, Harrison and me on the other. Judge Winters, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewed our paperwork efficiently before addressing us directly. "I see this as an uncontested dissolution with agreed-upon terms for property division," she noted. "Both parties are present and represented by counsel. Are there any last-minute modifications or concerns before I render judgment?" "No, Your Honor." Harrison and Nathan's attorney responded almost in unison. Judge Winters nodded, satisfied with the response. "Ms. Chen, Mr. Reed, do you both affirm that you've entered into this agreement willingly, without coercion, and with full understanding of its terms?" "Yes, Your Honor," I stated clearly. "I do, Your Honor," Nathan echoed. "Then by the power vested in me by the state of Oregon, I hereby dissolve the marriage between Olivia Chen and Nathan Reed, effective immediately." Judge Winters signed the decree with a practiced flourish. The property settlement as outlined in your agreement is hereby ordered. You are both free to move forward with your separate lives. Court is adjourned." The entire proceeding had taken less than 10 minutes, a strikingly brief conclusion to 4 years of marriage. As we gathered our belongings and prepared to leave the courtroom, Nathan approached, maintaining a respectful distance. "Olivia," he said quietly, "I just wanted to say goodbye properly and to wish you happiness in your new home." "Thank you, Nathan," I replied, appreciating the simple courtesy of his farewell. "I wish you well too." A flicker of something, regret, perhaps, or simply acknowledgement of what might have been under different circumstances, crossed his face. "Take care of yourself." "You too," I said, and meant it sincerely. With that final exchange, we parted ways. Nathan toward whatever future awaited him within the constraints of Reed family expectations. Me toward the life I was actively creating on my own terms. Harrison escorted me from the courthouse, the morning sunlight creating momentary blindness as we stepped outside. "Congratulations," he said, handing me a copy of the final decree. "You handled this with remarkable grace and strategy. Not all clients navigate such complicated situations so effectively." "I had excellent representation," I acknowledged with a grateful smile, and a clear vision of what mattered most to me. As Harrison departed for his next appointment, I remained standing on the courthouse steps, the weight of the document in my hands seeming disproportionate to its physical presence. After a moment's contemplation, I carefully placed it in my bag and descended to the street level, ready to embrace the day and the future stretching before me. My phone chimed with a text from Maya. "Court done? Need company or space?" I smiled at her intuitive understanding of the complex emotions surrounding this moment. Done. Official. As of 9:17 a.m. Space this morning. Celebration lunch at untold. Perfect. Proud of you. See you at Marjot's at 1 Gao. First round's on me. Instead of heading directly to my office, I drove to a small park overlooking the city. Finding a bench with a panoramic view, I sat quietly, allowing the significance of the morning to settle around me. The divorce was finalized. The Kensington house was irrevocably mine. The Reed family drama no longer had any claim on my energy or emotions. A sense of completion, not just of the divorce proceedings, but of a longer cycle of trying to fit myself into spaces not designed for me, washed over me with unexpected force. I had survived not just the end of my marriage, but the entire experience of being measured against standards deliberately calibrated for my failure. More than survived, I had emerged stronger, clearer about my worth, and unwilling to compromise. My authentic self for conditional acceptance. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves and new possibilities as I finally stood, ready to continue the day and the life that was now entirely mine to shape. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them on my own terms, in my own home, grounded in the knowledge that I was enough exactly as I was. The Kensington house awaited, its solid presence a testament to both history and new beginnings, and I was ready, at last, to fully inhabit the life I had chosen for myself. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the garden of Yao, the Kensington house, watching the spring tulips I'd planted in autumn push through the rich soil. Their emergence seemed perfectly timed, new life coinciding with the season of renewal and the fresh chapter I'd been writing for myself. The house had transformed completely in the months since the divorce, each room now reflecting my vision without compromise or concession. The kitchen renovation was finally complete, with the custom cabinets I'd designed myself installed alongside restored vintage fixtures. The third-floor space that had once been servants' quarters was now my home office, with built-in bookshelves and a window seat overlooking the city. Even the gardens were taking shape according to the landscape plan I'd developed with a local designer who specialized in historic properties. My business had not only survived the divorce, but thrived in its aftermath. Contrary to Vivian's threats about damaging my professional reputation, the clean, dignified conclusion to my marriage had actually enhanced my standing in Portland's real estate community. 2 significant historic property listings had come my way specifically because the owners had heard about my restoration of the Kensington Victorian and wanted someone who truly appreciated architectural heritage. The doorbell rang, interrupting my garden contemplation. I dusted soil from my hands and made my way through the house, checking the security camera before opening the door. Maya stood on the porch, bearing a bottle of champagne and a wide grin. "Happy house-iversary," she announced, stepping inside and presenting the bottle with a flourish. "1 year since you bought this magnificent beast of a house and began your triumphant independence tour." I laughed, accepting both the champagne and the quick hug she offered. "Has it really been a year? Sometimes it feels like I've lived here forever, and other times like I just moved in yesterday." "That's how you know it's right," she replied, following me to the kitchen where I retrieved champagne flutes from a glass-fronted cabinet. When something fits so perfectly, it seems simultaneously brand new and like you've always had it. As Maya popped the cork with practiced ease, I reflected on the truth of her observation. The Kensington house had indeed become an extension of myself, a physical manifestation of the life I'd chosen rather than the one that had been prescribed for me as Nathan Reed's wife. "To the best decision you ever made," Maya toasted, raising her glass. "Besides making me your friend, obviously." "To good decisions and true friends," I agreed, clinking my glass against hers. "I couldn't have navigated the past year without you." We carried our champagne to the sunroom, settling into the comfortable wicker chairs I'd found at an estate sale, and restored myself. Through the wall of windows, the garden glowed in the afternoon light, promising summer abundance with each budding plant. "Have you heard anything from the Reed clan lately?" Maya asked, settling deeper into her chair. I shook my head. "Not directly. Diane Foster mentioned that Walter's case was settled out of court. Some kind of plea agreement that avoided jail time but included significant fines and professional sanctions. And the mighty Vivian? Still maintaining appearances while the ship sinks? Apparently they've downsized to a condo in the Pearl District. The historic family home in the West Hills was quietly listed through a broker in Seattle. I assume to avoid local gossip." "Karma really is something," Maya mused. "After all Vivian's machinations to maintain the Reed family image, they ended up exactly where she was terrified of landing, socially diminished and financially constrained. I take no pleasure in their struggles," I said truthfully. "I just wanted a clean break and the freedom to build my own life." "Which you've done magnificently." Maya raised her glass again. "Speaking of which, any news from the Historical Preservation Society about your nomination?" The question brought a reflexive smile to my face. Just last month, I'd received word that the Kensington House Restoration had been nominated for the Portland Historical Preservation Society's annual award for outstanding residential restoration, a recognition typically reserved for professional architectural firms rather than individual homeowners. "Site visit is next Wednesday," I confirmed. "The committee will tour the property and take photos for the awards presentation next month." "They're going to be blown away," Maya predicted with absolute certainty. "What you've accomplished here isn't just a renovation, it's a resurrection. This place was half dead when you bought it." "It had good bones," I demurred, though her praise warmed me. "It just needed someone who could see its potential." "Like someone else I know," Maya observed with a meaningful look. "Speaking of seeing potential, how was coffee with Architect Guy? The one from the Preservation Committee?" I felt a slight flush that had nothing to do with the champagne. "His name is James, and it was just coffee to discuss historic window restoration techniques." "Uh-huh. And the second coffee to discuss. What was it? Original fixture sourcing?" "It was a professional consultation," I insisted, though Maya's knowing expression made it clear she wasn't convinced. Professional consultations don't usually end with dinner reservations at Luciana's, she countered with a grin. Unless the profession is dating, which, may I remind you, you're allowed to do now. She wasn't wrong. James Bennett, a restoration architect I'd met through the Historical Preservation Society, had indeed transitioned from professional acquaintance to something potentially more personal over the past few weeks. Our conversations had expanded, from window weights and period-appropriate moldings to favorite books, travel dreams, and shared values, culminating in a dinner invitation I'd accepted for the following weekend. "It's just dinner," I said, trying to temper both Maya's enthusiasm and my own cautious optimism about this new connection. "I'm not rushing into anything." "Nor should you," Maya agreed, her tone shifting from teasing to supportive. "But it's good to see you open to possibilities again. The right ones, on your terms, in your time." Her phrasing captured exactly how I felt about this tentative step back into the dating world. After the dissolution of my marriage, I had needed time to rediscover myself outside the identity of Nathan's wife or Vivian's disappointment. The past 6 months had been about reclaiming my space, both physically in the Kensington house and emotionally in my sense of self. Meeting James had been unexpected, but not unwelcome. His appreciation for architectural history matched my own, but more importantly, he engaged with me as a peer, respecting my knowledge, valuing my opinions, and showing interest in my perspective without agenda or expectation. Whether our connection developed into something significant or remained a pleasant interlude, it represented another aspect of the autonomy I had reclaimed. "Enough about my tentative social life," I deflected, refilling our champagne glasses. "How are the expansion plans for Brew and Bean coming along?" Maya launched into an update on her coffee shop's planned second location, and our conversation drifted to safer topics: business developments, mutual friends, an upcoming art exhibition we both wanted to attend. The afternoon passed in comfortable camaraderie, the kind of friendship that had sustained me through the darkest periods of my divorce and continued to enrich my life in its aftermath. After Maya left, I returned to the garden to finish the planting I'd abandoned earlier. The physical work of digging in the soil, nurturing new growth, and tending to the space I'd created felt like a fitting metaphor for the past year. Effort and intention combining to transform potential into reality. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the newly planted beds, my phone chimed with a text notification. Expecting Maya with a forgotten comment or question, I was surprised to see Nathan's name on the screen instead. "I drove by the Kensington house today. The restoration looks remarkable. Even from the eye. Outside, the transformation is evident. Congratulations on being nominated for the Preservation Award. You deserve the recognition." The message was unexpected, the first direct communication from Nathan since our brief exchange at the courthouse 6 months earlier. I stared at the screen, considering whether and how to respond. There was no ulterior motive evident in his words, no request or imposition, just a simple acknowledgement of achievement from someone who understood its significance. After a moment's contemplation, I typed a reply. "Thank you, Nathan. That's kind of you to say." His response came quickly. "I've been meaning to tell you something. After our divorce, I finally sought therapy to understand my patterns with my mother. It's been eye-opening. I'm sorry I couldn't be the partner you deserved." The admission was surprising in its vulnerability, so different from the guarded, deferential Nathan I'd known during our marriage. I considered how to respond, wanting to acknowledge his growth without reopening doors best left closed. "That takes courage," I finally wrote. "I wish you well on your journey. Thank you. That means more than you know." A pause, then a final message. "The house truly suits you, Olivia. It always should have been yours alone." I didn't reply further, recognizing the exchange for what it was. Not an attempt to reconnect, but a form of closure. An acknowledgement of truths that had gone unspoken. During our marriage, Nathan was finding his own path forward, just as I had found mine. Our routes had diverged permanently, but that didn't preclude wishing each other well from a distance. Setting my phone aside, I returned to my gardening, kneeling on the soft earth to plant the final row of bulbs before dusk settled completely. Each one represented a promise of future blooms, of continued growth, of beauty emerging in its own time. I patted the soil gently over the last bulb, satisfied with the day's work and the knowledge that spring would reveal the fruits of my labor. As twilight deepened, I gathered my gardening tools and made my way back to the house. Lights came on automatically as I entered, a modern convenience I'd incorporated into the historic setting without compromising its character. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7 times, its resonant tones filling the space I had, claimed as unequivocally mine. In the kitchen, I washed garden soil from my hands and prepared a simple dinner, moving with the easy familiarity of someone completely at home in their environment. Through the window above the sink, I could see the garden taking on the mysterious quality of nightfall, the shapes of plants and trees transforming into silhouettes against the darkening sky. The Kensington house embraced me in its solid quietude, bearing witness to my journey from Nathan Reed's wife to Olivia Chen, complete unto herself. The path hadn't been easy or straightforward, but standing in this space I had envisioned, created, and defended, I knew with absolute certainty that every difficult step had led exactly where I needed to be. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, client meetings, restoration decisions, perhaps eventually the tentative exploration of connection with someone who saw me clearly from the start. But tonight, in the peaceful solitude of the home I had fought for, I celebrated not just survival, but genuine thriving, the discovery that sometimes being thrown out is the first step toward finding your way home. Vivian Reed had intended to cast me out, to sever me from the family resources, to diminish me through exclusion. Instead, she had inadvertently freed me to reclaim my power, my voice, and my vision for my life. The irony wasn't lost on me as I raised a private toast to unexpected outcomes and the peculiar grace of getting exactly what you need disguised as losing what you thought you wanted. The deed to the Kensington house remained safely stored in my office, the legal documentation of property ownership that had become symbolic of something far more significant, the reclamation of myself. Vivian hadn't known I owned the deed to this house when she demanded I leave the Reed family orbit, but more importantly, I hadn't fully understood that I owned the deed to my own life, the authority to chart its course according to my authentic values rather than external expectations. That realization, more than any property or possession, was the true foundation on which I was building my future. One day, one choice, one restored piece of myself at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.